Hello.
Good evening, everyone. Uh, Piyush, I think we can start the meeting now.
Okay, sir.
Please.
So, okay, sir. Thank you. So, very good evening to all of you. Our respected guest, Dr. Devdeep Sarkar, Professor V.S. Tripathi, Dr. Mayank Pandey, Dr. Basant Kumar, Dr. Vinay Kumar, Dr. Anand Sharma, respected faculty members from other universities and colleges, and most important, dear participants. On the behalf of IEEE Student Branch, MNNIT Allahabad, I, Piyush Kumar Misra, take this privilege to welcome you all in the webinar entitled Ultra Wideband Antenna System, State of the Art and Future Research Directions. I appreciate your presence in this webinar from core of my heart. As we all know that humanity is facing tough time to fight against the global pandemic COVID-19, and the technologies developed by IEEE members are making a difference in this fight. Thus, they are justifying the motto of IEEE, advancing technology for humanity. IEEE is the world's largest technical professional organization. It was founded in 1884 with a mission to foster technological innovation and excellence for the benefit of humanity. Today, in 160 countries, there are 80,000 student members. A student branch gives a student to opportunity to meet and learn from fellow students and professionals in the field. IEEE student branch are established over 1,500 universities and colleges throughout the world. Student branch activities offer numerous educational, technical, and professional advantage of IEEE membership through special projects, activities, meetings, tours, and field trips. IEEE MNNIT is a vibrant student branch. Currently, we have 8 activity society and over 70 student members. Collaboration, inclusive excellence, and collective effort have made IEEE MNNIT student branch to reach new heights in terms of events and number of student members. Dear participants, there are few instructions which you all need to follow during the webinar. You are requested to mute your microphone and also please turn off your cameras. If you have any query or question regarding the talk, you can write it in the chat box. After completion of the talk, Dr. Devdeep Sarkar sir will address those questions in the time allotted for the question answer session. Now, I would like to invite our student branch volunteer, Mr. Kumar Mohit, to give brief introduction of our respected guest. Kumar Mohit.
Thank you, Piyush. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I, Kumar Mohit, welcoming you all in this webinar event. Today, we at IEEE MNIT Student Branch are privileged to welcome our speaker for tonight, Dr. Devdeep Sarkar. His current research work on design of MIMO antennas for 5G and beyond, wireless channel modeling, EM for biomedical applications and IoT makes him the perfect man to present on today's topic, ultra-wideband antenna system, state of the art and future research direction. Dr. Sarkar is a distinguished name in the IEEE Society, where he serves as a reviewer in the IEEE transactions on antennas and propagation, IEEE transactions on microwave theory and techniques, IEEE transactions on vehicular technology, IEEE transactions on plasma sciences, IEEE antennas and wireless propagation and letters, IEEE antennas and propagation magazines, and IEEE accesses. Also, Dr. Sarkar serves as an associate editor in IET Microwaves, Antennas and Propagation and IEEE Access since December 2019. He is currently an IEEE Antenna and Propagation Society Young Professionals YP committee member and vice chair in the IEEE YP Affinity Group Bangalore section. Sir had obtained his BE in Electronics and Telecommunication Engineering from Jadavpur University in 2011, MTech and PhD in Electrical Engineering with a specialization in RF and microwaves from IIT Kanpur in 2013 and 18 respectively. He has worked as a visiting researcher and postdoctoral fellow in the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering, Royal Military College, Canada, respectively during May 2017 to August 2017 and November 2018 to February 2020. After that, he has briefly served as assistant professor in Department of Electrical Engineering, IIT Ropar from March to July 2020. Dr. Sarkar has currently joined as an assistant professor in Department of Electrical Communication Engineering, Indian Institute of Science, IISc, Bangalore from August 2020. Sir's profile sparkle with the awards and honors like URSI Young Scientist Award YSA twice in the AP RASC 2019 and URSI General Assembly 2020, along with the Best Paper Award and grants from several conferences. He has also been selected for the prestigious positions of Infosys Young Investigator by Infosys Foundation Bangalore and recently promoted as senior member of URSI. Dr. Devdev has joined the editorial board of IIT Microwave Antennas and Propagation as an associate editor for a period of 3 years. Dr. Sarkar has co-authored more than 30 peer-reviewed journal papers and more than 55 international national conferences papers so far. Recently, his first solo article got accepted in IEEE Antennas and Propagation magazine on 29th March 2021 with the title Antenna Learning and Research for Students and Young Professionals in the Post-COVID-19 Era. We heartily congratulate you, sir, for the achievement. His current research areas include antennas and circuit design, massive MIMO system, sub-6 GHz and millimeter wave, centralized and distributed, intelligent reflecting surfaces IRS, near field communication NFC, and wireless body area networks, wireless power transfer and energy harvesting, and computational electromagnetics FDTD MOM. Sir's vast knowledge and research experience is panoply worth inspiring. So now I would request Dr. Devdev Sarkar to please take the mic and enlighten us. Sir, over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mohit and Piyush and Dr. Tripathi, Dr. Sharma, and all others. I mean, for inviting me here. So, okay, let me start my video also. I guess yeah. So, I mean, it's nice to see, and I can see in the participants some of my friends also. So, anyway, so without much delay, I thank you for the detailed intro and I mean. Including some of the information that was not providing in the bio itself. So anyway, so let me share my screen and just see that whether you can see properly. Then
Yes,
yeah, you can see it, right? And can you see this window
yes.
popping up, that one also, or that is not there? I guess it's not there, right? That you went.
Sir,
Anyway,
it's not in
yeah,
yes, yes, sir.
yeah. Now I guess you should be able to see the full screen.
Yes, sir, yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So without much delay, I mean, I will be starting the main agenda, main presentation. That is, as you can see, that it is this ultra wideband antenna system, state of the art and future research direction. So you can, I mean, I am currently in IISc Bangalore already, Mohit has told. So I joined here during this pandemic time in last August, and still, I mean, it is, you all know, like right now we are facing the second wave and it is dealing with, I mean, trying to cope with the situation. So I am currently, this is the kind of logo that I designed for our lab over here. Yeah, so I hope the slide is also changing. So the lab, we call it IDARE. It is actually laboratory for innovation and development in radars and antennas, radars and electromagnetics. So our main goal is to resolve problems on antennas, radars and general electromagnetics like this classical and quantum both, and which are relevant for the society, which are relevant for our next generation information and communication technology, healthcare, security, defense, and energy sector. And we actually try to look into the problems and try to solve them through different levels of research. Like it has to be in the component level, it has to be in the algorithm level, as well as the system level. So all the things we would like to, have with us, and all the sides of the research we like to touch upon. So before going into, the main agenda, it is important to actually acknowledge some of my like funding agencies and people who are supporting me in this journey. So first of all, I'd like to thank Infosys Foundation Bengaluru for providing me this Young Investigator grant. Then I am currently collaborating a lot with my fellow colleagues in Indian Institute of Space Science and Technology in Trivandrum. I am also associated and currently working in some of the directions with AD, DRDO, and Aeronautical Society of India. Texas Instruments, I am in touch with them regarding some of the projects, and NRSC Hyderabad, Remote Sensing Center. And last but not the least, my like place where I did my postdoc, and also I am currently collaborating on several fronts, Royal Military College, Canada. So, and many more to come. I mean, this is not an exhaustive list. These are some of the people who with whom I am currently working. And today's talk, I will be focusing on some of the research that we did very recently in collaboration with IIST Trivandrum and NRC Hyderabad also, and RMC Canada. So I will come to them in the later half of my talk. So this is the brief overview which I will be focusing here. Firstly, what do we mean by antennas and why they are important in the wireless communication system? Because the title of the talk is ultra wideband antennas and the state of art and some of the future research directions. So it is important to, first understand what do we mean by antenna, because people from other background may not be that familiar. So that's why I kept this part. And then why do we mean by this ultra wideband antenna system? Why do we call it ultra wideband, and what is the necessity and the context? That's what we will going to focus. And after that, I will basically talk about some of our research. I'll just hint towards that. It will not be a like detailed research description. I'll just present some of the results that we found and got recently reported on this band-notched ultra-wideband antenna configurations, UW antennas for body area networks, and some of the fundamental things regarding the energy in ultra-wideband antenna system. So in case you cannot hear me properly or there is any issue, I will request Piyush to just ping me or just turn on his mic and give me a heads up on that. Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah. So this is the first part, like what do we really mean by antennas in wireless communication system? And as we know that communication is, related to the information exchange between these different individuals and computer systems through some common symbols and signs or behavior. And we classify it into two different types. We call them one as wired communication and sometimes it's wireless communication, but not necessarily wired means some wire is there. It can be some other thing also, like just as I will show that the two-wire transmission line based or this wire-based telephony that we used to have, that is one example of the wired communication. But wired communication can also encompass this fiber optic kind of system also. So essentially by wired we mean that there is some guiding medium and the electromagnetic wave is actually going through that. It is not leaking out in the free space or interacting with the free space kind of thing. So that is the wired communication. And when we call wireless communication is actually the electromagnetic transfer of information between two or more points that do not use a guiding medium by which to perform this transfer. And whenever we have this wireless communication, a relevant example could be, now you know that Mars rover is there and Perseverance rover, and there are some orbiter, and we have our ground stations and deep space network. So the communication that is happening from the ground station with the orbiter or the rover, that cannot have some transmission line or wire or a fiber optic cable between them. So we must have that free space propagation and propagation through that electromagnetic waves. So which will not have a guiding medium, like it can be, as I said, it's free space. So there we need the antennas. So antennas are kind of, you can say that in the transmitter end as well as the receiver end, they will be integrated, and in between them there is going to be some wireless channel through which the information is going to be transferred. Now, the evolution of wireless communication, and first, I mean, the example of that kind of thing was, you can probably recall the experiment done by Heinrich Hertz, his classical experiment, which were conducted in his laboratory using this end-loaded dipole. I hope you can see the picture over here. There is this end-loaded dipole, and here we have a spark. And this induction coil is actually producing a high voltage and creating some kind of spark over there. And the spark, as we know from our present knowledge, it can have frequency component over a wide frequency range. But when we have the dipole sitting over there, it is a resonant system. It has a mean resonant frequency. So it will actually select some of that, and it will transmit through the free space. And there is another receiver that was a small loop, and there was some induced sparking, like some spark here produced an induced sparking at this receiver location. So frequency generated by the spark transmitter is determined by, as I said, resonant mean frequency of the antenna system, and the small loop actually detected this induced spark. So it was done, you can see that in 1887, in the VHF or UHF range, the mean frequency was at that point, and the corresponding wavelength he could manage in the indoor experiments. So more on this you can find in this particular website, but not sometimes we tend to not remember, but it is very important that we remember the works done by Acharya Jagadish Chandra Bose almost 100 years back. That was also in the 1896, if you see, and the type of experiment he did during, at that time India was under British rule. So Acharya J.C. Bose, he gave his first public demonstration of EM waves by using them to ring a bell remotely and to explode some gunpowder. And at that time, the Daily Chronicle of England reported that the inventor J.C. Bose has transmitted signals to a distance of nearly a mile, and herein lies the first and obvious and exceedingly valuable application of this new theoretical marvel. So, why it is important in the present context? Because you can see that the experiment was carried out in millimeter wavelength. And the present day, when we are talking about all this 5G and 6G, we are going into these kind of frequencies. But he did a similar experiment long back and used waveguides and horn antennas and dielectric lenses, various polarizers, and even semiconductors at frequencies as high as 60 gigahertz. So that is why, I mean, it is a kind of, I feel that it is a proud thing for Indians. So apart from that, I mean, we know in 1896, Marconi also achieved a transmission distance of 2.5 kilometers by using earth and elevated aerial at both the transmitter and receiver. And this is a picture taken from his, like the aerial that he used in Poldhu in Cornwall in December 1901. And well, it was the experiment, success of the experiment was more by circumstance than design, and the radiated signal were in the MF band about 850 kilohertz. So this is the type of antenna that was used, and this is a typical Marconi antenna, as people sometimes say, but actually this is a quarter wavelength ground plane vertical monopole configuration. Yes. Yeah, Piyush, please go ahead.
Yes, sir. Actually, voice is not coming, so I sorry to interrupt you. Please continue, sir.
Oh yeah. So can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Now we can hear.
Okay. So for how long it was blocked out?
Yes, sir.
No, it was audible to me. Hello.
Oh, okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
I think.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
it is audible to all other members, I think.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Please
sir. It
continue.
is audible, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Yeah. So as I was saying that this is the like typical quarter wavelength ground plane. I mean this Marconi antenna or the half wavelength, I mean quarter wavelength monopole antenna. So now some like in order to build up to the ultra wideband thing, so I wanted to just show you some glimpse of the type of antenna that we use in real life, like in our cell phone handsets. So we are all aware of the evolution from this first generation to the fifth generation. And so in 1942, if you see that early days, there was this military grade portable AM and FM radio, but which was not in the civilian domain. So we cannot say that it was within this first generation or second generation kind of thing. But first example of this 1G, you can see that a businessman using a Motorola, the handset, portable cellular phone at some Meigs Field Airport, Chicago. And this is the type of cordless phone that was used and the type of antenna that is put over there. And through the time, it has evolved, and we can see that there has been a drastic change. I mean, this is just up to 2000. Present day, we are looking into smartphones like this. So you can notice that there is no longer this protruding kind of antenna or quarter wavelength monopole or whatever, half wavelength dipole, the way you try to explain it. That kind of structure is not there. It is now integrated in printed circuit boards and probably placed at some of the edges or rims of the smartphone, occupying very less area. So there has been a significant research in the antenna domain besides the circuits and the digital signal processing and all other things. So the type of antennas, these are basically narrowband antenna if you look into, like their sleep dipoles or whip antennas. The purpose of it, like you can see a coaxial cable and inner conductor is protruded out like that, and we have a metal sleeve over here, and that sleeve will, the purpose of it is to provide the this balanced current and stable omnidirectional pattern, because when we are using the cell phone, the objective is to capture signal from all the azimuth kind of direction, something like this. So this is a cut of that omnidirectional radiation pattern that we generally have from this kind of antenna. And in some cases, like we use the whip antennas also, like it was used, and some spring-like structure. So, but as I mentioned, that these are narrowband antenna systems, and we tend to look into the current distribution at our operating frequencies. Could be in the GSM 900, could be in the 1.8 gigahertz, and some of the surface current distribution and 3D radiation pattern at 1.9 gigahertz for an iPhone. So you can see that although they are, I mean, applied for the cell phone application, but depending on the side adjacent electronics and the placement of this antenna system, the radiation pattern and the current distribution on the handsets change. So this is why I put this one, because antenna engineering is ultimately, it converges into a point where we need to actually engineer the currents on the system, and so that we get a desired radiation pattern, get a desired polarization, and also at the same time achieve a proper impedance bandwidth, and other parameters are also satisfied. So this is the purpose. And if you want to get more about this part, mobile phone antenna design, then it is important to, I mean, you can see this kind of literature. One of them that I put, mobile phone antenna design in Antennas and Propagation magazine in 2012. So various applications are there. This is one of the applications that I put, that cellular handsets, laptops and television, space, satellite and radio astronomy. We have antennas in security and defense system, in aircrafts and in the radar system as well, sensors and automotive radars in the vehicular technology, Internet of Things and wearable devices. So research direction in antenna that actually diverges into several directions, biomedical application and many more. So now the question comes that why and where do we need the ultra wideband antenna? That is the main agenda of our talk. So the concept of ultra wideband radio, it is important to understand that this UWB technology is defined by the Federal Communication Commission as any wireless transmission scheme that occupies a fractional bandwidth more than 25% or more than this 500 megahertz of absolute bandwidth. So this is very important that we understand the definition of ultra wideband is not really confined to any specific frequency range. It has a concept, it is a definition that is related to the fractional bandwidth and more than a certain range. So it can be the center frequency can be anywhere, but we have to ensure the fractional bandwidth. And in the lower frequency regime, it is sometimes called as the 500 megahertz of absolute bandwidth. But fractional bandwidth definition is of course more popular. So what is the advantage of this large bandwidth and how they are achieved in the signaling? They are achieved by very narrow time duration baseband pulses of appropriate shape and duration, and these include the family of Gaussian shape pulses and their derivatives. So benefits to using large bandwidths in an additive Gaussian noise limited environment is that they can help us to achieve higher data rates without the need to increase the transmit power, or without the need to resort to some sophisticated error control coding or higher order modulation schemes. And in a multipath dominated environment, this larger transmission bandwidths result in the ability for increasingly fine resolution of the multipath arrivals. And so this actually leads to reduced fading per resolved path. So these definitions or this like explanation from the communication perspective, you can actually go through this very nice paper in the proceedings of IEEE that was published in 2004, and which has all the fundamentals of this thing. So probably in a 45-minute or 1 hour lecture, it is not possible for me to explain all the things, but I just try to give you the correct source so that you can look into these perspectives. So some of the this was the definition from the FCC perspective, but if you want to, you might be curious that when or for which application did people start looking into all those things, these ultra wideband systems and stuff like that. So if you go historically, then you can find that there was a lot of interest in the ultra wideband radar. So UWB radars at the lower frequencies VHF and below, when there was high range resolution was needed. So for the radar perspective, that was on the order of a meter in that case. And this is the basis for the highly successful UWB ground probing radars and ground penetrating radars, sometimes we say. And the need for UWB arises when extremely high range resolution is required, perhaps a few centimeters. So bandwidths for that kind of resolution, it need to be several gigahertz to achieve such a high resolution. So microwave frequencies, this means that large relative bandwidths are necessary. And this paper, this is also a very nice paper on the ultra wideband microwave radar conceptual design that was in the Aerospace and Electronic System magazine. So there in that paper, I have just taken the characteristics of the ultra wideband radar, and you can, the main thing which I wanted to highlight was these parts, like if you see that the frequency range, you can probably observe that it is 8.5 for this particular paper. This is not for the general UWB, 8.5 to 11.5 gigahertz and 30% bandwidth. And the type of the antenna, that was the parabolic reflector fed by a TEM horn. So you can see, and also another, important that when we talk about the antenna, we also have to think about the source. So the transmitter, the type of transmitter was the TWT or some combination of TWTs. And power is 5 kilowatt average and 200 kilowatt peak. So these are, the origin. You can see that from when the UWB kind of systems came into the picture, and originally it was mostly from the UWB radar perspective. And this is another, paper that talks about the transmitter research, and it is in the IEEE transactions on plasma science. So here, the ultra wideband sources and antennas, what they say as that they are for interest of a variety of potential applications that range from the transient radar systems to communication systems. And so pulsars, they call it UWB pulsars, which are capable of transmitting high peak field signals through variety of antennas. And one of the examples that they give, and they also in this particular paper in the transaction on plasma science, there is this is just a part of the table that is there. So different sources and the types of antennas for this kind of application that was mentioned. But note that here we are basically not only talking about some vacuum devices or similar kind of thing, but also solid state sources are there. And the operating voltage is, I mean, due to the application requirement, it is not exactly the kind of impulse radio that we will be discussing mostly in this talk, where we have this kind of a limit. Like if you see the TIRP emission level and the frequency. So here comes the concept of the impulse radio, that the FCC approved the deployment of UWB on an unlicensed basis in the 3.1 to 10.6 gigahertz band, and to limit the power spectral density measured in a 1 megahertz bandwidth at the output of an isotropic transmit antenna. So it was defined like that. But the frequency band is 3.1 to 10.6. That is actually considered like more popularly now, and sometimes people get also a little bit confused. They think that only 3.1 to 10.6 is the UWB, but that is not true. That's what I try to emphasize. So this is an unlicensed band, but the definition of UWB is something slightly different. So this is important. So why this spectral mask? This allows the UWB enabled devices to overlay the existing systems while ensuring sufficient attenuation to the limited, to limit the adjacent channel interference. So interference with other systems that we will handle also, using some kind of band notching that we will show. And this additional PSD limits has been placed below the 2 gigahertz to protect the critical applications like the GPS and as shown. So there are additional spectral masking in the lower range. So first consequence of the spectral mask imposed by FCC is to render the use of baseband pulse shapes difficult without, they need some additional transmit filtering to limit the out of band emission spectrum. So that is why the pulse shape that is also becomes very important. So in short, where we are trying to, in the civilian domain, where we are trying to use the UWB, it is a candidate physical layer mechanism for IEEE 802.15 WPAN or wireless personal area network that uses the short range high rate connectivity. That complements other wireless technologies. So this is the use area. By short range, we mean like this. So wide area network, all the cell phone and all those things, they are fine. But like short range or personal area network, that's where the most of the application of the UWB radio or the impulse radio goes. And this is another, just to illustrate that point, what do you mean by short range? And the title of the paper, isn't it? High speed short range. So high speed means high capacity. So what is the capacity with respect to the transmit receive separation distance for, let's say, UWB and the ISM that we talk about? So if you see, the 2.4 gigahertz ISM band, sorry for the typo here, it should be ISM, contains 80 megahertz of usable spectrum, implying that 322 megahertz IEEE 802.11b systems can operate on a non-interfering basis, and each offering a peak rate of 11 Mbps for a total aggregate of 33 Mbps. So this is something. And Bluetooth in its low power mode has a rated 10 meter range and peak over the air speed of 1 Mbps. But UWB systems are currently designed. So this currently means, at that time, 2004, designed for 110 Mbps at 10 meter range with 4 co-located clusters. And this projects to a special capacity of about 1.3 Mbps per meter. So, but you can see that if you increase, the way it works is for larger transmit receive separation distance, it falls down. But for the lower thing, it is actually increased. You can see the high capacity. And UWB, can you mute? There is some noise. Yeah. So thus UWB represents a trade-off between lower spectral efficiency for increased power efficiency to achieve a given rate or range operating point with the limited transmit power. So this is the basic concept. So now, it is also important to understand the thing in Indian concept, because sometimes some people tend to say that, okay, it is FCC and it is for US and stuff like that. So where do we stand when we think about the UWB in terms of the Indian perspective? So Wireless Planning Commission and this National Frequency Allocation Plan. So if you look into this WPC website of Department of Telecommunication, Government of India, you can find lot of resources for use in the public domain as mandated by your government. So one of that is this NFAP, that it is called the National Frequency Allocation Plan. And you can actually look into it. It is a 200-page document. So it is, I feel, that most of the wireless communication designers or antenna engineers from this country, we should definitely have an eye into what kind of thing that the government is currently looking into. So one of the things I would like to highlight, I just took the screenshot from some of that what they mean from our government perspective, what we mean by a ultra wideband device or equipment. So short range device that has bandwidth of at least 50 megahertz. So this kind of definition is given, and you can actually go into this documentation. And there are lot of review meetings also going on. So these things keep on changing. They are not in the hand of the engineer. So important thing why I tried to give it here, that I presented that spectral mask kind of thing specified by FCC, but similar kind of thing is actually mandated for the different frequency range. This is taken from this GSR 1046E. The frequency range, you can observe that these different subbands, like the entire frequency range up to this 10.6 or more than 10.6 also, this is divided into different subbands, and each of the subbands has their maximum mean power, spectral density, and maximum peak power EIRP defined in 50 megahertz. So these values are there, and you can actually see that how they are. I have not explained all these things because it is a very long document, and you can actually have a look in details. So a lot of details are given there. So this is a generic UWB device usage. So in that document itself, there are some of the other applications that are also mentioned for the UWB systems, like location tracking system, UWB device installed in road and rail vehicle, material sensing device using wideband technology, and building material analysis. Yeah, Piyush, can you mute the contestant who have not muted yet?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So these are some of the application that it is provided in the documentation. So you can actually have a look, and the way the table was given for a generic thing for all these systems, like this location tracking and UWB device for road and rail vehicle, material sensing device, and building material analysis, all these things, there are separate tables. And this particular text, it is given in the page 9 of this NFAP, that short range devices and devices using UWB technology made use of the radio frequency spectrum and fast assuming crucial importance to our citizens, as well as specialized and public and private sectors like medical implant, ground probing radars. So this I already mentioned, that how the history of the things came, and security utility agencies. Not only that, machine to machine communication, Internet of Things largely depend on these SRDs and UWB devices. And these devices are not considered as providing radio communication services and usually kept out of the purview of the radio regulation. So this is very important. And there are a lot of annexures also which provide very long details of this. So I strongly recommend that, people from Indian perspective, they should have a look. So what type of antennas do we prefer in the ultra wideband? So I get to review many papers, and mostly in this UWB regime. So there are these printed monopoles, fat monopoles, like instead of the Marconi antenna or quarter wavelength monopole that we have, there are a lot of these fat monopoles that are given, and planar inverted cone antenna. So this is one of the early papers, and where they try to achieve this kind of a VSWR response. So it is much less than 2. And there are sometimes a lot of structural modifications done to get this VSWR performance. And the gain also has to be flat. And it is not necessarily completely flat, but at least there should be some stability over the entire band. And patterns also, something like this is desired. So because there is a ground plane placed here, so it has the lobes mostly like this. So, but there are, apart from this printed monopole, there are other type of antennas, and recently a lot of research is going on something like this wrapped bow tie antenna. You can see that it is a bow tie antenna which is kind of wrapped. So if the wrapping was not there, it would have been a normal bow tie antenna, but it has been wrapped, and not only that, it was loaded with some kind of resisting structures over here. So this gave rise to a very, I mean, the number of slots and as well as the loading, they gave rise to a very wide band, I mean, performance. So you can see the frequency range, it's from 0 to 40 gigahertz, and it is a broadband thing, and it is used for this UWB pulsed radar application. So what is the purpose of the loading? The loading purpose is, if you see that it is not loaded, then there are a lot of ringing in the time domain pulses or time domain radiated electric field. But when we give the discretized register loading, as you can see from this figure, it actually suppresses those things, and we can get a proper pulsed system. So the idea is that when we have the wide bandwidth, we'll actually suppress the ringing. But if you use, let's say, a narrowband antenna and provide it with a pulse, you will observe a lot of ringing. So that is the kind of analysis that we need to think about when we're dealing with the ultra wideband technology, because in the textbooks, we mostly deal with a single frequency system like e to the power j omega t kind of excitation. And but I mean, when we go into this kind of pulsed systems, the analysis that we do, the vector potential approach, we have to now shift into a more time domain and more general kind of thing. Another important thing is the how do we use this UWB radars, or sometimes this is a, I mean, it can be a UWB MIMO radar also, that vital sign monitoring through the back. So this, I thought that this is an interesting paper and I should probably share. So you can notice that where this UWB radar is placed, some guy who is driving and just behind the back seat. I have another picture for that. So the concept is very simple. I mean, the simple radar, pulse radar kind of concept, and the type of antenna, you can see it is our very familiar, that ultra wideband monopole thing that we generally have. So this is the radar chips, and I mean, the two things, I mean, transmit and receive components that are integrated, and they are actually encased into this 3D printed kind of dielectric structure. And it is placed in behind of the car, and from the front view it looks something like this. And the purpose is to track the vital signals, and it is mostly, you can go through this particular paper, which is in the IEEE Transactions on Biomedical Circuits and Systems. So heart rate measurement or some kind of observation on whether if the guy is wearing a pacemaker kind of thing, that it can able to track. So this is some kind of application that is currently people are looking. And why ultra wideband? Because you saw that it has a, I mean, very low that spectral mask is there, so low power emission, and that's why it can be used in this kind of near field application. If you are using a very high power kind of thing, well, I mean, that's not the way you go about it. So in some cases, the band notched system we currently actually look into, because in the ultra wideband system that we have, sometimes say there can be interferences from adjacent channels or bands, and it is the key requirement. I mean, mitigation of these things is a key requirement for any practical receiving system for improved efficiency and increased SNR and overall performance. So frequency notched. So what we do, it is a wideband response, but some of the part is actually created some kind of band notch, and that actually helps us to eliminate some kind of additional filters that is integrated with the system. Piyush, I think still some people have not muted. I can hear a lot of noises and sound from other mics. So can you actually scroll through the attendee list and probably mute, because you are probably the host, right?
I have already muted all persons.
Okay.
I have logged
Okay.
the mic of all persons.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so but still I can hear some kind of small noise. Anyway, so as I was telling, that frequency notched ultra wideband antenna, thanks to its inbuilt notch filtering kind of functionality, is a potent solution for this purpose. And what we do here, various notching techniques are used, like shape slots and embedding of parasitic resonators adjacent to the radiators, integrating the SRR in the feed line, and combination of all these things. They have been adopted over the last few years. And many of these designs use this printed monopole as the reference radiator for realizing the frequency notched UWB response. So this is some work that I did when I was a master student in Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur, working under the supervision of Professor Kumar Vaibhav Srivastava. So this is an antenna that I designed at that point, that it was a half elliptic kind of structure. Like instead of using the full circular monopole, I use a half elliptic monopole, and we had a ground plane that is symmetric to that. So that we can get a wide frequency response, wideband frequency response. And this was the way we tried to go with the design. Like first we designed the main antenna and we put all those kind of notching structures so that we can actually have a band notch at some of these desired locations. So we also fabricated the thing and compared the VSWR response from both simulation and measurement. We measured the radiation patterns at various frequencies. So, I mean, you can look into this paper. So this is one of the very highly cited paper on this band-notched ultra-wideband antenna design. And we also measured the gain and realized gain over the frequency range at this like small frequency bands. You get the band-notched kind of performance. So another design that I did at that time, and it was presented in one of the international conferences in Hiroshima, Japan. So this was some antipodal Vivaldi antenna I took, and I used a split ring resonator kind of element in front of the aperture, and that also led to this kind of band notch in a sharp band notch kind of characteristics. And we reported that in that conference in 2013. So there has been, I mean, a number of paper and slot here and slot there kind of thing. Sometimes people say, and if you notice that there are a lot of papers in this band notch ultra wideband antenna that has come over the last few decades. And but one of the like very nice books on this domain is this book by my colleagues Chinmay Shah, Dr. Jawad Siddiqui, and Professor Yahya Antar, who is my I did postdoc with him. So this multifunctional ultra-wideband antennas, trends, techniques, and application in this book, they have actually summarized a lot of research that they did on this particular domain. So one of that is the ultra-wideband antipodal tapered slot antenna with integrated frequency notch characteristics. That is done by Jawad Siddiqui, Chinmay Shah, Dr. L.A. Sheikh, and Professor Yahya Antar. So, I mean, the structural, it is a tapered slot antenna. I mean, it can look quite similar to the antipodal Vivaldi antenna. And in front of that, they have these split ring resonators to get these band notch characteristics. Then, I mean, there are a lot of more papers like dual SRR loaded UWB monopole antenna with dual frequency and wideband notch characteristics. So there they use a CPW monopole and put these split ring resonators near the microstrip feed. So, I mean, the details of those things I will not go into, but you can actually get this book or get these papers also to see the main concept. What I tried to say was similar. Like we had the S11 and we had the gain characteristics, and there actually we have this sharp notch created by this split ring resonator, and where the gain actually falls down, and the S11, that is the reflection coefficient, that goes up. So this is the thing that is manifested from this plot. So another dual complementary characteristic antenna that they report, ultra wideband printed antenna with dual complementary characteristics, where they have this narrow band as well as the frequency notched UWB and normal UWB performance reported from an antenna. So, I mean, these are very interesting work, and that actually led into some dual band reconfigurable printed antenna in the magazine. So there they use this kind of a like a motor kind of structure, and using that and this, I mean, control system using this Arduino and servo motor and this connector cable, of course, it is there. So the purpose was that to change the location of the split ring resonators by some command, and that will actually lead into selective, like multifunctional band notch characteristics. So this is actually important in the case of cognitive radio application. I will not go in today's talk, will not go into that, but this has some interesting applications in the domain of cognitive radio. And the MIMO configurations are made up of that. Actually, I worked with some of the master student in IIT Kanpur on the ultra wideband MIMO technology as well. But today I will not be going into those directions. I'll be trying to give a holistic view that not only this, what we say as the printed monopole, but ultra wideband performance, as we saw that horn antenna traditionally they are having this ultra wideband performance. So very recently we have this work that is done in collaboration with NRC Hyderabad and by Sandeep. He's a scientist over there, and Dr. Naresh. And so this is a circular split ring resonator array integrated frequency notched horn filter with wide and strong rejection band, which is very recently reported in IEEE Access. So this is the kind of horn filter where we have the filter, SRR filter sitting near the feed, and this is the complete system. So horn antennas of various families and its planar version, they are attractive choice as receiving antenna elements due to the high gain and directional nature, along with the wide operating bandwidth. And key elements in point-to-point communication, satellite and radar communication, feed element of reflector antenna. So this is the SRR array that is placed. I mean, details you can get from this paper. So we reported very strong notch characteristics into this narrow range, and it can be actually tuned by changing the SRR geometry. There are theory that is given in the paper, equivalent circuit models. And the gain suppression that was very high. We observed in this small band, you can see from 7.5 to 10.2 gigahertz wide frequency bandwidth, which falls in the UWB category, typical Narada horn. And but the whatever gain suppression we are getting, that was in the comparison table actually proved that it is 35 dB, so very high gain suppression. So that is one work. So the band notched UWB antenna, I described the different application. But apart from that, I will talk about two more things. One is the UWB antenna in body-centric communication. That is also something we are working on in collaboration very recently. So body area networks, they are important in the context of sports, healthcare, multimedia, and indoor data transmission. And there are different frequency bands. I will not go into the details, but this authorized minimally invasive ultra wideband, that is from this 3 to 10 gigahertz, as I reported, so provides some of the attractive features, like it has this low spectral density, low interference, less prone to fading, high data rate. We already talked about this part, but this is actually widely used for wireless nodes that are worn in our body or in close proximity to the body. So inherent challenge lies in the choice and the design of this on-body antenna. On-body channel modeling also. There are also a lot of challenges. Antenna-body interaction due to body movement, body shadowing effects for NLOS channels that lead to degradation of the radiation efficiency and radiation pattern. So these are some of the challenges, and this body-centric communication, there are the channel modeling part you can see from this paper, and there are many other literature. This is just one paper that I'm showing. So this is some of the work that we reported last year, and I mean, it came out probably in last year's December. So this was mostly a study that we did, that on-body antenna, another off-body antenna was placed in close proximity, and we actually tried to measure the different channel properties, power spectral density, group delay, and we tried to correlate and observe the effect of this human tissue. So this is the study that is done by Elizabeth and Dr. Devarati Ganguly, along with ours, like myself, Dr. Chinmay Shah, Jawad Siddiqui, and Professor Yahya Antar. So we actually reported this antenna that previously was used as the starting point for the band notch systems, but now this is not a band notch. This is a typical ultra wideband system, and at the different frequencies you can see how the radiation pattern looks like. And the radiated field, you remember that picture for the pulse radar. So the radiated field, how it looks like when it is excited by a differentiated, or some order of differentiated Gaussian pulse. And then we tried various configurations, like one configuration like this, as it was shown in the earlier picture. We measured and simulated the input PSD, radiated PSD, received PSD. And this was done for several configuration and lot of, angular tilts and distances that was done. And these are, details from that you can probably find in this paper. And we did some of the measurement results also and observed the group delay response. And the objective of this study, like this is a more than a study kind of work that will later on try to see what kind of antenna effects are there in the system. Like this is just one type of UWB antenna that we have used, but how the change of the antenna shape and antenna properties can actually lead into some kind of change in the time domain functionalities also. So one of the main motivation of that was because of our fundamental study, that's something we did on the energy around antennas, and in particular energy around the ultra wideband antennas, did with collaboration with Dr. Said Miki and Professor Yahya Antar. And so this is some fundamental work that we have, that representation of electromagnetic energy around antennas. The way we looked into the subject, it was mostly from the Q factor and all those things which are relevant for a narrowband kind of system application. But when we have the ultra wideband system, the story will change. So I'll just present the logic behind that. The way we define the Q factor, it is here, like 2 or twice pi into this reactive energy divided by the energy radiated per cycle. And it is clear from the Q factor definition that it is relevant at a single frequency, especially for a resonant antenna. However, a wide class of non-resonant antennas also exist, like leaky wave antennas are there, and typically UWB antennas are also there. So the study of the near field energy of these antennas, and that is not possible using simple Q factors, because there will be a lot of additional things that are coming into the picture. Not only that, we are using the pulsed excitation. So it will have a wide array of frequency content. So how all these frequency contents are interacting with the antenna system and how it is interacting with the near field distribution, that is also a key thing. And we know that since pulses, it is going to be, some transient effects will be there. So all these things we try to actually look into in details. And we proposed a new concept, like the antenna reactive energy we all know, but we introduced something called the localized antenna energy, and it was some fundamentally different. How it is different, I'll show. So this was first time in this particular paper, Said laid the theoretical foundation. So essentially what we do is, from the pointing, total EM energy density at a point, we subtract a term that is related to the pointing vector. And we then go through the theoretical, regularizations like energy regularity and how it is strictly positive semi-definite, and how we can evaluate using FDTD regime. So this is the difference between when we find out, actually I reported one of the work on the time domain reactive energy also. So just differentiating, like we found that the localized energy will always be somewhat less than the reactive energy. So you can look into these papers, but from the ultra wideband perspective, what we saw, that we can now, using that localized energy density, we can take a temporal average of the thing and observe a spatial distribution of this localized energy. And that is very relevant into observing the mutual coupling path between two nearby ultra wideband antennas. And sometimes in ultra wideband MIMO system, let us say a 2x2 UWB MIMO system. So on the transmitter end, we may have two antennas like this. So in some cases they can be connected through the ground plane. Some cases they might not be connected to the ground plane. So these are actually done in my own in-house FDTD code, but they can be done in any other time domain solver, commercial solver like CST that we have now. That can be done. So this type of system I tried to model, and I found out what is the overall frequency domain response of the VSWR as well as the S21. And then we excited, we found out some of the observation planes. So they can be actually specified some distance from the antenna or very close to antenna. And on the observation plane, we can actually find out the temporal average of this pointing localized density. And we can use different types of pulses, and that will change how the energy, average energy will look like. So this picture is something that is not available in the conventional way, and that is why this work is going to be, reported in a few months, probably in the 2021. I don't know which issue it will be assigned, but in the magazine it is going to be there. So it changes the way we look into the system, that if we have a like Gaussian pulse excitation, then this is how this time averaged map of the localized energy along these UWB antennas look like. But if we change the excitation to this narrowband signal. I can probably go back a little bit. So this picture, it is a narrowband signal, that is the excitation at this 6 gigahertz. So in the 6 gigahertz, the case 2 antenna that is given by the red color over here. So this antenna that is having more coupling. So if you try to see the coupling at a specific frequency, just hit it with a modulated Gaussian pulse for that frequency, and you can actually observe that how it is the ground plane connectivity is leading to a specific structure of the localized field near the thing. And I mean, to go more into the fundamental thing, probably I think it will be nice if someone goes through the book that is written by Said and Professor Antar on the spatial structure of antenna near field. So that is, I mean, probably the like my talk today, and I'll like to summarize it. That ultra wideband antenna, I tried to give you a bird's eye view, like a historical perspective, and the radars and the spectral masks and how the various antenna geometries are there, and why we need the band notched UWB. For some cases, it is not, I mean, all the UWB antennas, we always don't have to go for the band notch things, but we can use some resonator loading to get the notch band where some specific frequency band is filtered out by using these resonators, and that does not require your like external filter integration. Not only that, UWB antennas are useful for body area networks, because we saw that the low power level and all those things make them very nice candidate for this body area network through, and we studied some of those things. We showed the importance of doing full wave simulation and measurements. And I also presented some of the energy aspects of the UWB system. So of course, for each of these things, we can have a separate long talk, but I tried to give a wide purview of the subject so that interested students or young professionals can actually go into the scope of the research. And scope of the research is defined by the application. So it is important to first understand what kind of application we are looking into, whether we are looking into a ground probing radar system or whether we are looking into something for the body area network. So there is no one single solution for all the system. Each of the system might need solution strategy that is customized for that direction. So with that, I would like to thank you for your attention, and I'll be happy to, I mean, answer the questions that are asked by different participants.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
It was such a very nice and informative session for us. I think.
Thanks.
Sir, there is several questions in the chat box. So
Yes, I can probably have a look into. Okay. Yeah, I think it will be good if you can just, because some questions might be same, so you can just moderate that. I think that will be good.
Differentiate between.
Yes, sir. So first question from Ramya Radhakrishnan. For what range of axial ratio bandwidth can we claim the circularly polarized antenna to be ultra wideband one? He's asking for the range of
So I
axials.
think,
Yes.
yeah. So, well, I think it is a nice question. Like most of the ultra wideband systems, circular polarization is not always that much desired, because sometimes people use dual polarized system also. So axial ratio bandwidth, I really do not see in the literature that there is any specification. But I think that since impedance bandwidth is of that 25%, and the overall absolute bandwidth is 500 megahertz, and in Indian context you saw that it is 50 megahertz. So I think pretty much that range should be sufficient to define, because the 3.1 to 10.6 gigahertz application, those are stable omnidirectional antennas, and CP is not needed for this kind of systems. So we have to go by the original definition of the UWB in that case, that is 25% or more than 500 megahertz. That is my opinion, but I have not seen any specific thing in the literature. Yeah, you can tell the next question. Yeah, so I can see another question. Piyush, can you hear me?
I think there is some problem with Piyush.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah.
Please continue. Please.
Yes. Yeah, I can actually also see the chat box. So I was trying to see, okay, what are the industrial applications of UWB MIMO antenna? I think that part I can see. Before that, is there any question? I am a bit sure. No, I don't think. So this is
There is
probably the
one question by Mr. Aditya Pal. How to achieve ultra wide bandwidth while designing the multiband patch antenna without affecting its resonating frequencies?
well, yeah, so I mean, without affecting the resonating frequencies, it is,
This
I
is
don't think, yeah, it is not probably possible, like, because you have to play, yeah, merge the bands and all those things.
Yes.
So that is there. Yeah. Well, I would probably like to answer Jeet's question. I think Jeet Banerjee, I can see that what are the industrial application. So yeah, industrial application, the way people are looking into the ultra wideband MIMO. So a lot of application in the automotive radar, because MIMO radar is a very upcoming field and it is relevant for the like self-driving cars and all those things. So I am currently in touch with a lot of industries who are looking into this kind of problem. And but they are not this 3.1 to 10.6. They are mostly for the 77 gigahertz and all those frequencies. So, but the wideband system is needed for those radars because of the, as I said, originally we need the range resolution. So resolution part or scanning kind of thing, it requires a wideband system. So there is lot of requirement of having a ultra wideband kind of system, and people are looking into that. We are also collaborating with people on these kind of things. So that is one application that I can tell, industrial application. So there are many other things also, like some work is done on the cognitive radio using UWB MIMO, that is also there. But this one came to my mind. Okay, and then I can see another question. Okay, from Jeet himself, like why UWB MIMO papers are not containing the time domain IR analysis of the antenna. Even papers are, well, I am not probably the best person to comment on all the IEEE tab papers. But what I feel is time domain analysis and fidelity analysis that is relevant for some application but might not be relevant for other applications. So I have to go through the papers which had this missing detail. But as I said, that for automotive radar, some other parameters are needed. So we can have to think from that perspective. How do we decide the physical parameter of any antenna, and how we distinguish the resonating antenna and non-resonating antenna? This is a, well, physical parameter of any antenna. What do we mean by that? Physical parameter can be many things. Resonating antenna, non-resonating antenna, you have to look into the input impedance, or sometimes we say the impedance matching thing. But antenna resonance is something that you find out from the input impedance plot, not the S11 dip is not the antenna resonance. So we have to be careful about when we call that something is resonating, something is not resonating. Yeah, and then multi-band patch antenna, how to without affecting, well, I think that is not possible. 4 questions about UWB. Yeah, so I guess here some of the questions that already I explained, like for example, how can we use the UWB antenna in medical application? So one of the things that I presented using that vital sign monitoring. So there are a lot of, I mean, similar kind of papers and patents also in this direction. Micro stethoscope and stuff like that. What is the difference between multiband antenna and UWB antenna? I guess it is pretty obvious that we have multiple, I mean, resonances, discrete resonances in case of multiband thing, but in this case we try to get them together and merge them. And yeah, super ultra wideband, I see some of the papers, but I am not fully aware that whether there is any specific definition for that. But some of the papers report very wide bandwidth. So, like for example, the paper with like this carved or wrapped bow tie antenna that I showed, that has a very wide bandwidth. So we can call them a super wideband. And merge UWB antenna with filter, yeah, that is possible. I think there is no issue. But in that case, the bandwidth of the system, when we design a cascaded system, if you place a filter or a rectifier or something like that, so although your antenna might be UWB, but the full system might not be ultra wideband. So you have to be careful about that. UWB and MIMO antenna in RF energy harvesting system, how it will be better than other energy harvesting. Yeah, so well, this is a nice idea. I think we can pursue that. RF energy harvesting is typically, well, the challenge mostly for UWB, I mean, the RF energy harvesting is the rectifier design part. So I am not fully sure that whether UWB and MIMO will help in that direction. So, well, I guess there are some more questions. What is the physical condition for any antenna that is essential for radiation? Yeah, so this is a fundamental, like how antenna radiates. We have to go through that, like accelerated charge or oscillating current, and how we can have the discontinuities to achieve all those things. Yeah, so body-centric communication using UWB antenna, I think I already discussed, and you can probably have a look into our paper, and there is a long reference list in that, so you can probably see. Okay. Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you want to do for the WWAN application, so it is possible, or I mean, not possible. I mean, it is compulsory to do the SAR analysis, but you have to keep the power in the proper level. Like for the SAR analysis with, let's say, a cell phone, the power level that you keep. In this case, we have to know how much power we are going to be used on the body-worn antenna. But SAR analysis has to be there. I mean, without that, we cannot like tell that this system is safe to be wear by patients and people like that. And modeling of human phantom, well, I mean, there are a lot of already available things that is there. I mean, in the CST and other softwares also, HFSS and FICO. So they have the existing models of phantoms, and where we can actually get the proper, what should I say? I mean, dielectric properties and stuff like that. So that's it. I think probably there is no more question.
Yes,
Yeah.
no more questions. Thanks,
So
thanks a lot.
yes, I can stop the sharing now. Yeah.
Piyush,
Is Piyush logged out somehow? I think so.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. I, Aditya Pal, take privilege to extend vote of thanks. On behalf of IEEE MNIT student branch, I convey my extreme thankfulness to our honorable director, Professor Rajiv Tripathi, who has given his consent and blessings to organize this webinar. Further, I convey my deep regards and hearty thanks to Dr. Devdeep Sarkar, who despite his very busy schedule, accepted our invitation as a speaker. We are highly motivated by his gracious presence and inspiring address. I now express my sincere thanks to Dr. Mayank Pandey, Counselor of IEEE MNIT Student Branch, for his constant support for the smooth conduct of the webinar. I further thank Professor V.S. Tripathi, Advisor of MTT and AP Societies, Dr. Basant Kumar, Dr. Vinay Kumar, and Dr. Anand Sharma, conveners of this event, for their direction, guidance, and providing stimulating environment for organizing this webinar. Now, I would like to thank all the participants for their patience and cooperation who joined this webinar from different regions of the country. IEEE is a professional society for you and by you. It is your support that keeps us motivated and energized. Moreover, my sincere thanks to IEEE MNIT student branch and Cisco WebEx Meet for providing their platform. A special thanks is due to volunteers Dr. Nand Kishore, Piyush Kumar Misra, Saurabh Raj, Diksha Maurya, Kumar Mohit, and Vivek Rajput. These volunteers worked very hard to make this event a success. Last but not the least, we thank Almighty God for enlightening the path of wisdom for us. Thank you all. Thank you, sir, for such a wonderful session.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thanks very much for thing.
thanks again. Thanks, everyone.
Yes, thanks, Professor Tripathi. Thanks. See you. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you.
Hello. Hello, Adit.
Piyush, your voice is not audible.
Okay. Hello.
Piyush,
Mohit, I think meeting has over, na?
meeting has ended. Meeting has completed.
Okay. Uh, from my side, there is a network issue, so it was.
Aditya Pal has given the vote of thanks, and VST Party sir has
Okay,
concluded the
okay.
meeting. Sir has also left, I
Okay,
think.
okay. So, okay, everything I think will be fine now.
Okay, I have taken some snapshot of the last PPT, which was shared by the Dr. Sarkar. So I will
Okay, okay.
WhatsApp the PPT.